Hi, this is Patrick Flores-Scott on behalf of Ann Arbor District Library and Washtenaw Reads, talking to you about All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiley. And we talked a little bit about Rashad, who'd been the victim of a beating at the hands of Officer Paul Galuzzo at a convenience store. And that beating was witnessed by Quinn, whose best friend is the officer's brother. And the officer himself, Paul, really helped raise Quinn, this witness of the crime, after Quinn's father had died in Afghanistan. But let's move on and look at just a little bit about the Rashad chapter, and then I want to focus a little bit more on Quinn. We focused on Rashad before, but Rashad is in his second day in the hospital. It's Sunday, and his parents bring in the pastor, and we get to see this beating through so many different perspectives, and it's framed in so many different ways in the story. And in this case, very briefly, it's through religion. And the pastor wants to be extremely supportive and let Rashad know that God is always with him. And Rashad just has this line that he says he wishes the pastor had told him that God wasn't with him, because the God that pastor believes in and wants Rashad to believe in, Rashad thinks, should have done something to prevent this and prevent other beatings like this. And I think that the way that faith gets tested in these moments is just a really powerful thing that Jason Reynolds explores in this chapter. Our faith, people's faith, whatever they choose to believe in, gets regularly tested, and in this case, it's tested in a big way. And I wonder if some people find strength in their faith in these moments, and other people have their faith tested in these moments. And as you read, it's something to think about, whether you're a person of faith or you're not. So anyway, I just found that really interesting and fascinating, and to see how Rashad's parents lean on faith, and Rashad's brother Spoonie basically outright rejects it and is even disrespectful to the pastor. And just the way the family dynamics play out in the book is fascinating, and you see how tough it is for families to hold together, for family dynamics. You know about your own family, how challenging the dynamics can be. Even a loving family where everyone supports each other, things are really challenging. But then when a family is struck by such a massive and emotional and psychologically damaging event, how that can play out even in an even bigger and more devastating way. Those family dynamics can be tested in an even stronger, more damaging way. And one thing Jason Reynolds does is he sticks Rashad in that hospital, and he keeps him there. And I wonder about, in real life, the distance that is created between us as witnesses. I think of Quinn as a witness in this book, but we're also the witnesses in this book, and we're also the witnesses when these tragedies happen in real life. And but there's so much that keeps us at a distance from the emotion and the hearts and the lives of the families and of the victims, and even of the perpetrators. We get to see the veneer and the sheen, and we get to see somebody else's marketing and somebody else's polishing and somebody else's dirtying of the people who are involved, as opposed to truly seeing them in the way that Jason Reynolds invites us to see Rashad and to see his family in this book. And we get to see things like Rashad having to watch on the TV the beating and the news coverage of the beating over and over again, And he's attempting to recover physically from the effects of the beating. And then there's this entire emotional piece that's even more challenging. And I just wonder what that might do to a person experiencing that trauma over and over again in the immediate aftermath of in this case a beating. So again, Jason Reynolds just puts us right there, and we're there with Rashad in a way that hashtags and news coverage just kind of turns something that's extremely emotional in the days immediately after when a video gets released. There's so much emotion, I think, on a personal level, a personal connection, but then that distancing occurs and it becomes cold and intellectual, and separates us from the humanity of the situation. So when Rashad sees the video, he sees a picture of himself in an ROTC uniform, and his brother Spoonie, who's very actively trying to fight against the image that he's afraid that the media will use to portray Rashad to benefit Officer Galuzzo, says if they don't frame the narrative, we will. And that takes me right to Quinn on Sunday. Quinn's family, his family is very small. It's his mom and his brother. But he has this amazing extended family, which is his best friend Guzzo, and all of Guzzo's cousins, and his brother Paul, the officer who beat Rashad. Paul is portrayed as this very generous and caring family guy who is there for Quinn's mom at one of her low points after Quinn's dad had died, and he's there for Quinn as a father figure. And on the Sunday after the beating, there's an impromptu barbecue at the Galuzzo's house. The parents have thrown the barbecue. Paul is there flipping burgers. He's an amazing hamburger maker, and you wonder why they threw this party so quickly afterwards, and there's all this tension in the air. Everybody is kind of walking on pins and needles, and Quinn's love interest, who is Paul and Guzzo's cousin Jill, does not do that. She does not walk on eggshells. And anyway, I just wanted to read a little scene with Jill. This is really Quinn's chapter, but something really struck me about this scene with Jill. Jill had thrown a party. She got in trouble with her mom. There's a great connection there with the police after that party, but I'm going to kind of focus on this moment between Jill's mom. They're in the kitchen. Quinn is witnessing this. Quinn's mom is there, and the Galuzzo's mom is there. They're all there, and Jill's mom is yelling at her. She says, "This is serious. The Rowells are still screaming at us because of the last party you threw. This is it. You've really blown it this time." All right, I got it," Jill said, standing like she was ready to fight or run, whichever she needed. "Can we not do this here?" Her mother leaned back and drew a big breath as if to collect herself. "And one more thing," she finally said. "You can't expect Polly to just be there to save you all the time." "Oh my God, I don't." Mrs. Galuzzo had been half-heartedly rinsing off a few of the now empty platters with my brother, but when she heard Paul's name, she swung around. "You do," Jill's mom continued, "and he's got bigger and better things to worry about than his little cousins screwing around." "You're right. He does," Jill said under her breath, but everyone heard her. "Hey," Mrs. Galuzzo interrupted, her face going all tight and pissed. "You watch what you say next." She stepped away from the sink. Everyone else in the room went quiet, and Jill had gone deep red. "You might have a little respect today, in my house, today." The platter in her hand shook, and my mother put a hand on Mrs. Galuzzo's back to calm her. "That's what I was trying to say," Jill's mom said, stepping closer to Mrs. Galuzzo. "I mean, you know, he has an important job." She fumbled for more words, then turned back to Jill. "See what you've done? You apologize to your Aunt Rita right now." "I'm sorry," Jill said automatically. "You're always sorry," her mom added bitterly before sucking on her cigarette. "Honey," Mrs. Galuzzo said to Jill, her face softening, "Paul has a hard job, and sometimes he has to make tough decisions. All I'm saying is please respect that and who he is." So there's this real tense attempt to keep everybody in line and to frame what happened in terms of Paul's job is hard and we have to stick together. And I think and there's a ton of tension with Quinn, and you get the sense that some people know that Quinn saw what happened and other people don't know. If he saw it, you don't really know, but you sense in Quinn all eyes on him, and there's an intensity to how people are connecting with him, especially with Paul. He feels really threatened by Paul, coming off of him seeing him beat Rashad in a way that that Quinn did not recognize. This important person in his life. He didn't recognize him through that level of violence, and now he's seeing it all. But the questions I had about this chapter were just about the facade of family. Like, families are real. Everything about it is real, but there's also the desire to keep, when things are tested, instead of exploring the emotion and reality of that thing, we fall back on the facade. And this family was just gonna stick together. This huge extended family felt this need to have everyone come together, everyone get on the same page. And I feel like as communities, maybe we do that same thing. There are certain I think maybe I'm asking the question, are there certain themes that come up again and again with each of these shootings that we see videos of and beatings? Are there themes that come up again and again about how the media asks us to view the perpetrator of the beating and the victim of the beating? And are we asked to say most police are good people, which is something that I believe, but why is that the focus when there's one who in this moment perhaps was not? There's this desire, just like with the Galuzzos, I think, having read this, it just makes me think about the way we as communities might try to focus on that facade, as opposed to getting to the heart and the guts and the emotion and the human story of what's happening. So I think as you go on and read this story, that's another framework for you to look at the story through the framework of the facade, and like Rashad's brother, his attempt to frame the story, the Galuzzos' attempt to frame the story in their way. And at school, that's going to be another story, how teachers are maybe going to attempt to frame the situation. Quinn's a basketball star. How is his basketball coach going to try to control the narrative with his players? So anyway, that facade, that chain linking of like locking arms of family just fascinated me in this chapter. So anyway, I'll come back with another video, but that's a lot of my thoughts and questions that I had about Sunday with both Rashad and Quinn.